Hello, this video is demonstrating how to set up a professional letter. I'm going to start by just going to Word, opening up a Word document. I am going to use a blank document, so again, I strongly encourage you to stay away from letter templates. They do not set up things correctly typically. So one of the first things that you want to do, especially starting from a blank Word document, is to adjust the font to whatever font you plan to use. I recommend some sort of really professional, clear format, nothing too small, nothing too big, nothing bubbly or frilly. And then the other thing that you'll want to do is in Word automatically adds this extra spacing in. It's going to do it without you ever telling it to do it. What you want to actually do is go to the little up and down arrow space, the place where you would signal if you want single spacing, double spacing, etc. And there's going to be these two little phrases at the bottom, add space before paragraph, and then the second one says remove space. You want both of these to read add space. If either one says remove, that means that you have extra spacing. So I clicked the remove and now they both say add. We're good to go. I'm going to just make sure that it's on one. Also, it's always a good idea just to double check and make sure that your margins are set at 1 inch all the way around. That's considered professional. You don't want to go half an inch. You don't want to go 1.5 inches. You really want to kind of stay with the standard format. So then what you'd want to do is, of course, start by typing in, let me rethink this. Start by typing in your address. So this is the sender's address. Of course, I'm just going to make something up since I'm a lot of times you can include other information here, such as like a cell phone number or an email address. That's perfectly okay. You could also include like a LinkedIn address there, but you want to kind of narrow it down to the most essential information. Once you have that, then, sorry, I'm going to get rid of the blue hyperlink. Then you go ahead and double space it, and then this would be the recipient's address. So couple things to pay close attention to here is when you are setting up the recipient's address, you can do two things. If you have a specific person's name, you can include that either above the address, so as the first line of the address. You can include it as an attention line under the business's title, or you can include attention line after the address in a separate sort of section in the letter. Any of those would be okay. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to make sure that I add my date in, which is July 7th. Okay. So one thing to notice is that as I am doing this, each little section has a double space in between, and then my spacing for the addresses, my spacing for the paragraphs, they're all single spaced. So one of the other things to notice, you'll notice I did the greeting, dear Professor Roberts. Use a colon after the greeting and not a comma. This is a really common mistake that gets made in letters, so you'll want to make sure you address that. When it comes to typing out the first line of the paragraph, you do not indent the paragraph in cover letters. They are going to stay lined up with that left-hand margin. Same thing, then I double space, I'd start my next paragraph, etc. And then I would eventually get to the point of my sign off. What I typically would do there is leave sort of a double space, so 4 spaces. And the reason for that is then I can add my handwritten signature to it, which adds again another professional element. So having that handwritten signature is really important. And so again, about 4 spaces gives you the room to do that. Now, sometimes if you do not include like an email address or phone number at the top, you might include that after your information at the bottom. If you have a title, you might include your title there. So there's little tweaks you can make, but this is the basic setup of what it should look like. Now, in terms of where all this is on the page, this first one that I set up, you'll notice is all aligned with the left-hand column. You do have a little bit of freedom to choose if you want to stick with that format or if you want to do something a little bit, I don't want to say more creative, but just a little bit different visually. So you can set off the senders, sorry, gotta add the sender's address and the sign off into the center of the page. You can also choose those 2 pieces to align on the left hand side. So those are a couple different options that gives you a little bit of freedom of playing around with the letter format. And of course, with the number of paragraphs, you should use as many paragraphs as you need, breaking each one up, keeping each one fairly short. They should not be giant, long, blocky paragraphs in a letter. You can also choose with the sender's address to be a little bit more, trying to think of the word I want to use, a little bit more intentional with including things like a logo or an actual business heading. So maybe the company has a particular letterhead that they use. Well, of course, you can use that in place of just typing it out. So there are some options just in terms of making it look professional. And then of course, little things, right? You want to pay attention to punctuation in the addresses, punctuation in the date, making sure everything is spelled correctly. You might have noticed I just caught one of my own spelling errors. Everyone does it. So lots of little things to do, but in terms of just basic formatting, this is the basic format that you would want to use. And then again, you can kind of play with whether you want the sender's address and then the sign off in the left hand side, middle of the page, or right hand side, the date, the sender's or the recipient's address, the greeting, and then of course the paragraphs all need to stay lined up on that left hand side. So hope this helps give you some ideas about just how to visually kind of lay out the letter. Any questions, of course, always reach out. Other than that, have a great day.